Thank you, sir. Hello everyone. Welcome to Raja IAS study group. So, first of all, wishing you all a very happy Earth Day. So, today we are celebrating Mother Earth. So, I'm not going to go in much of detail. Let's just pledge to plant a tree today. Okay, and first of all, before we start our session today, there's this announcement. We are conducting All India free prelims test series. Absolutely, we are charging you nothing but your time. So your first test has happened on 17th April. You can appear for your second test on 24th April and your third test on 1st May, right? So please do register for the tests on the link given below, right? You can also know more about it once you reach out to our Telegram group or our website, right? So as you all know, today is Friday. I am Drishti and it's your 8th lecture of internal security and social issues, right? So let's start the session for today. Hello Rohit, hello Bapandas, good afternoon. Uh, so this is your index for today. We are going to discuss three very important topics for today's session. First is India's national cyber security strategy. It was proposed in 2020, but it has still not come into play, and India is one of the most vulnerable countries of the world when it comes to cyber security, and this is a burning hot topic considering the world scenario right now. Okay, then there's the second report that has come up. Oxfam has released a report on first crisis then catastrophe. It relates to poverty levels of the world, extreme poverty levels of the world that have been happening, that and the reasons why this has happened, why the world situation has come to this scenario. We are going to discuss everything in detail. And your third topic is poverty in India. World Bank has recently released its third report, poverty in India. What are the issues associated with it, why we have come to this, and what is the criteria, the benchmark for poverty line, what have been the committees, and how can we amend the situation that is prevailing right now. Okay, so now let's get started. Our first topic is India's national cyber security strategy, right? It was proposed in 2020. Right now it is in news because there have been constant attacks from China. Cyber security strategy is the need of the country right now. It has also been quoted by a top official from Prime Minister's office, right? This is skill chain. I've taken this infographic. You'll find this infographic. You can read it in detail. It's not relevant to UPSC, but I've put it in there because it is very useful when it comes to your day-to-day cyber usage. Okay, you will find this PDF in our Telegram group right just after the lecture, so you can read it from there. Now, these are the few facts why India needs a cyber security strategy ASAP, as soon as possible. So Indian organizations, they witnessed around about 218% rise in ransomware attacks. Ransomware attacks are Trojan attacks that have happened, viruses, deadly viruses that have been installed by the hackers. I'm pretty sure you know all about it, how hacking and ransomware and Trojan viruses work. So there has been increase in around about 218% of ransomware attacks in India, and it makes India the 10th most targeted country in the world and second most targeted country after Australia in Asia Pacific region, right? So this is the gravity of the situation right now. And there is this American cybersecurity firm They have said in the report in 2021 that Maharashtra was the most targeted state. Maharashtra was the most targeted state in India and has been facing 42% of all the ransomware attacks all around the globe, right? The chief targeted areas of the attacks were software and services, capital goods, and your public sector, right? These were your major targeted sectors. Now the problem is we use internet is just tip of the iceberg. So this is what we know. The area in World Wide Web or internet which is visible to us, around 4% of people, 4% of internet content, which includes your public websites such as Google, Amazon, your search engines, etc., etc., right? Then comes your deep web. It contains your 90% of the internet content which is not accessible via search engines. This includes your government resources, academic information, medical researches, etc., etc. And then comes your culprit dark web. The deep web, where hackers are there, where all sorts of illegal activities happen, including hacking, body trade, body organs trade, human trafficking, sex trafficking, ransom, etc., etc. So these are basically the encrypted networks, and the problem is these people cannot access the dark web, but the dark web has access to dark web itself, deep web, and your World Wide Web. So people from dark web, because they are tech savvy, it becomes very easier for them to attack these two groups of people. Now the problem is we have come the warfare which has been happening all over the world. We have come way across, way far from the border, cross-border warfare. Now we have come into the age of hybrid warfare. Hybrid warfare. Recently what has happened is there is this private security cyber firm. It has reported that India has been facing continuous repetitive attacks from China on SLDC. Your SLDCs are state load dispatch centers. Your SLDCs are your state load dispatch centers, and they basically are responsible for carrying out your real-time operations for grid control, and electricity. So we have come way far from the cross-border, the old school warfare. Now we are in the age of cyber warfare and biological warfare. So recently what has happened is a private security firm has notified Government of India that the SLDCs, 7 major SLDCs, particularly in North India, were attacked regularly by China. That too in the areas that share proximity with India, in the bordering areas of Jammu Kashmir, Uttarakhand, and your northeast region, right? Basically their attack is on, see, if you want to dismantle the security of any country, you just have to attack on two major aspects: their telecom and their electricity, and then you can dismantle their national security strategy totally in a very easy manner. So as evident from the Ukraine war right now, what has happened is, taking a cue from that, in Government of India has become really serious about this, and this has been happening all along. So the push for the demand for a concentrated holistic cyber security policy has been rising up in India. Right now, let's discuss what has how the process has evolved. So National Cyber Security Strategy was proposed in 2020. It was conceptualized by your Data Security Council, DSCI. Data Security Council of India team, and it was headed by Lieutenant General Rajesh Pant, right? The aim of the report was to ensure a safe, secure, trusted, resilient and vibrant cyberspace for India, and it basically focused on your 24 major areas, important areas that were important, right? So these are the main sectors of focus. 21 में से भी these are the main core areas of focus that have been there. See, large scale digitalization of public services, everything has become digitalized. अब वो time नहीं रह गया you go to a सरकारी office and they'll take out the records. Everything has become computerized, everything has become DBT based, right? If you need subsidy, if you need any sort of services, everything has become digitalized, especially with the invent of Aadhaar. Last week we discussed how CAG has flagged a couple of discrepancies in Aadhaar, right? So even that is connected to this. So large scale digitalization of public services has happened, but because we do not have a safer, secure network, even it puts this at risk. So we have to rectify the situation, and the processes in which this happens have to be safeguarded and encrypted, right? We have to maintain a particular supply chain security, जिसमें कि will have to ensure the vaults where data is stored, they are protected, involving the people from all dimensions of society, right? Critical information infrastructure, which basically includes your military information, your nuclear information. See, basically what happened in Natanz in Iran, right? Stuxnet, we have learned our lessons, so better not it gets repeated in India. We have already seen India has become 10th most targeted country in the world, and especially China has been watching India like a hawk. So considering the global scenario, we'll have to see this, check this out as soon as possible. Then digital payment system is become very vulnerable. Everything, especially since demonetization has become digitally equipped. Most of our payments, we already saw the rise in digital payments, but still these networks are unsecured. People, basic layman people who don't know how all of this work, Internet of Things works, they are the most vulnerable people to all these things. See, even if you buy something or you get notification from banks, everyone tells you not to share your OTPs, but sharing OTPs has been the common problem for people from all sections of society. So with people who cannot comprehend that sharing OTPs might lead to your economic losses, how can you expect them to understand the complex process of digital payments? So it's the responsibility of Government of India to protect that vulnerable section of the society. Then we'll have to form state level cyber security initiatives. Will have to work on these, especially taking cue from the Telangana police. They have formed a dedicated cell for this called Cyberabad, right? So this sort of model can be replicated all over India. Then security of small and medium businesses, especially post GST, right? When every filing has become digitalized, we'll have to organize hackathon, workshops, etc., etc. So these people understand how the nitty and gritty of it works. Now, let's come to the recommendations that have been provided by this report, right? The report says budgetary provisions. The budget, there should be a dedicated budget from your annual budget for this cyber security protection, which is said to be initially started from 0.2% and then gradually to be raised to 1%, right? Since research and innovation is the prerogative, usually private players, they play a crucial role in research and innovation. So it is said that private players should be involved in research and innovation, so that the solution to this problem can be found as soon as possible. We have to recruit active amount of human resources so that they can help out, figure out how vulnerable sections of society can be prevented. Then crisis management is a big aspect of this report's recommendations. Once some cyber crime, cyber theft, cyber security breach has happened, how we have to deal with it. Then there comes the part of cyber diplomacy. Diplomacy, as you know, it is a cross country thing, so we have to specially work hand in hand with neighbors, especially our neighbors and countries that are continents apart, so that cross continental or cross border cyber breaches do not happen, do not become a daily case scenario. I already told you about Cyberabad. Now cyber in crisis management, what we can do is we can try out cyber security drills. We can share the information of the threats, the probable possible threats between the government departments, and hence prevent the instances from happening. Then cyber insurance is something which is still being processed out. There has not been a formulated policy about it anywhere in the world. Cyberspace is something that is still not that still does not come under the prerogative of insurance, but we still have to form a policy, formulate a policy around it, so that just in case if some mishappening happens, then the person who's suffering the consequences must be insured in some way. So this has to be talked about and the process has to evolve. Then cyber diplomacy we have already discussed. With cross continental and cross border governments, we have to share informations. Interpol is a good example, but Interpol Interpol, it works on the basis of sharing of criminal information. Similarly, for cyber information we can have a dedicated agency purely for this sorts, both on national and international level. Then cyber crime investigations, once the crime has happened, normal police, normal core police, they're already so understaffed, right? Overburdened, overworked and understaffed. So we need a dedicated cybercrime investigation branch, just that they can nab the culprits. Now the report has also suggested a couple of recommendations what the way forward can be. So we need a futuristic national cyber security policy which comprises of a holistic development around how cyber crimes can be prevented, how cyber education can be provided, and hence no negative outcome should come out of cyber usage. Then we need a much quicker upgradation of existing infrastructure, especially where the data is just lying vulnerable. That includes our Aadhaar vaults as well, as discussed in previous video. Then we need to enhance the general awareness levels of people. We have to educate our children how to secure, how to protect their data, privacy concerns, everything. Also, in government offices where people are not that much tech savvy, people who come from a different generation altogether, there should be workshops organized for them, hackathons, games, in whatever means we can provide that general awareness information to them. That has to be done, right? Then private sector is a key innovator, so we have to make it sure that these people get involved and they come out with some research and development outcomes, so that our cyberspace as a part of country altogether can be protected. I forgot to mention one thing. There is this agency called CERT-In, government agency called CERT-In. They should be roped in, they should be mandated to work out the national cyber security policy of India along with the necessary stakeholders, right? So this is about this topic. Now let's come to our social issues topic. Our social issues topic is, there has been a report launched by Oxfam. See, Oxfam is a confederation of 20 odd non-governmental organizations spread all over the world. Their basic aim is to alleviate people out of poverty and hunger and extreme destitution, right? Their headquarters are in Nairobi, Kenya. So this is about Oxfam, very respected organization. They keep on coming out with various reports, and this is the report they have released of pre-pandemic scenario. So the report's name is First Crisis and Then Catastrophe. This is infographic I've taken from their briefing, official briefing. So they have said, unless G20 leaders come together and the World Banks act immediately, crisis of inflation, inequality, COVID, everything wrapped up together. Abhi isme we can also add the Ukraine crisis. They will have devastating effects on world economy, right? So extreme inequality, the unprecedented food and energy price inflation, these are the problems all over the world, right? Now details, let's see a couple of details. Their report is based on the projections that were made by World Bank, and a couple of years ago research done by World Bank and Center for Global Development, right? They released this report particularly when a meeting is about to be held between World Bank and IMF. Their spring session is just about to go, so they have released this report just before that, so that there can be discussions made on this particular topic. Now there have been a couple of key findings from the report. Let's discuss those. So financial crises have been happening all over the world. The recent example, burning example, is Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, we all know what has been happening there. So financial crises have been happening. Even India's economy has come down. So we are trying to cope up with continuous fuel inflation, price inflation of everything. See, fuel inflation impacts everything. Your transportation, then your milk prices, oil prices, food prices, everything. So continuous hyped inflation has been there all over India. Then there, because of n number of reasons, especially your COVID has happened, so there has been an increasing gap between rich and poor. The report says top 10 rich families of the world have become 10 times richer during the COVID period. Pandemic and rich people, pandemic has benefited the rich people a lot, the business houses. There have been constant theories about COVID as well. So, but the report says your pandemic has benefited rich people tenfold. Then people in extreme poverty, the pandemic has pushed people into extreme poverty. A, because they were not able to meet their basic demands. B, they lost their employment. C, they were unable to afford the basic medical health care facilities, and hence a lot of cases turned out to be fatal, right? Because healthcare was unaffordable, so they lost a major chunk of their savings as well. Then there are effect on agricultural companies. Your oil companies have been making most of the profit because of whatever has happened, right? Food costs have increased drastically. Milk prices have soared high in India, right? This has led to poverty, further push to poverty. Then hunger, hidden hunger, and other simultaneous issues have risen, like abuses, education crisis, other social issues that have happened due to a domino effect that has sustained all throughout together. Then real term wages, because people who work on daily wage labors, so their real term wages have been affected because they have not been able to find employment. A big section of workforce became unemployed, right? Also because the cost of everything has increased, so what they were actually earning seems very less in reality terms now. Gender inequalities have increased. Why? Because women have borne the pressure of both abuses. Also, they have been the first ones to be terminated from their jobs as per the recent reports. So this is all that has been happening. These were the key findings of the report. Also, Oxfam has given a couple of suggestions for the same. So just before World Bank and IMF has to meet, Oxfam have suggested a couple of things. So these are the suggestions that have to be implemented by IMF and World Bank, basically cutting down on the loans that they have given. So World Bank and IMF should cancel their debt payments for 2020 and 2023 for lower middle income countries. This has been their first suggestion. Then cuts in value added taxes on staple food and cash transfers. This has been their second recommendation, especially to protect the poorest from inflation, right? Then they have sort of floated an idea for additional tax, a 2% tax on personal wealth above 5 million, 3% tax for wealth above 50 million, and 5% for wealth above your 1 billion, right? So this is an extra additional tax that has been imposed. Then special drawing rights, your SDR under IMF should be reallocated to ensure it is debt and conditionality free, right? So Oxfam have suggested that IMF should exercise its rights related to SDR, and they should be reallocated. Then it has been said that the emergency support, it should be provided to your lower income countries and it should be increased. Then we should introduce one of a permanent wealth taxes to fund a fair and sustainable recovery from your COVID scenario. COVID has still not ended. Even in India, the cases have been rising altogether. We are facing multiple mutations, and hence the report still holds valid, right? There should be an act to protect people from rising food prices. There should be a global fund for social protection to help the poorest of poor, and making sure they have essential income security for their populations, right? So this is what the suggestions have been made by Oxfam. Let's see how this rolls out, what IMF and the World Bank has to say about it. Now let's come to our third topic of the day. Our third topic of the day is poverty in India. The report has been released by World Bank recently. So according to World Bank, the working paper of the World Bank, extreme poverty in India has dropped to 10.2% in pre-COVID year of 2019 from as much as 22.5% in 2011. See, your Oxfam report was before COVID, pre-COVID, and this is your post-COVID. So we will have to join these together while merge these together while writing our answers, because poverty has been a core issue of your social issues topic and revolves around your Marxist ideology, right? Socialism has somewhere its roots very deep seated in Marxism, so we cannot ignore this aspect of it, right? So now let's get started with basic definition of poverty. Poverty, despite of what some politicians would want you to believe it is not a state of mind, it is an actual problem, a very deep-seated multidimensional problem, right? Poverty is a multidimensional problem. Basic definition is when you do not have enough money to sustain your basic minimum needs. Basic minimum needs, not your luxury, not your clothing, lavish clothing, your basic minimum needs of roti, kapda, makan, healthcare, education. But poverty has your multiple dimensions, as in you can be income poor, you can feel the lack of security, you can be education poor, you may feel you do not have the education that you require, you might face health care crisis, and then you can be social capital poor. So these are a couple of multiple dimensions of poverty faced by people all over the world, right? How poverty is defined in India? It is a condition in which an individual or a household lacks the financial resources for basic minimum amenities of their standard of living, right? Absolute poverty is shortfall in consumptive expenditure. Basically, this is based upon your concept of poverty line. See, you must have heard people talking about BPL, below poverty line and above poverty line. So people who are below poverty line are said to be the people who need your state assistance, because they cannot they cannot manage their basic expenses on their own, right? So your official poverty line is the line that is incurred to obtain goods in a poverty line basket, right? So this is your basic definition of poverty. It is measured in the terms of number of people that are living below the poverty line and expressed in the terms of your head count ratio. The depth of poverty, it indicates how far the poor are below the poverty line. So this is the cases that have to be addressed continuously. Now let's come to the trap of poverty, how poverty actually impacts. This is what is in lines with what Marx said, right? The bourgeois thing, what Marx said. So this here, let's see how your poverty trap works. So you're born into a low income group, right? This ultimately leads to your low savings, because आप कमाई थोड़ा सा रहे हो, उसमें से क्या ही बचा पाओगे. So this leads to low savings, which further leads to low investments, then ultimately leads to low economic growth. Now when you have low economic growth, you provide low education, low healthcare level to your children, then you develop low levels of human capital, hence incur low productivity, and again you fall into the trap of low income. So this is how the churning practice, the trap of low income continuously happens. Here comes our old friend, the sustainable development goals, your goals that have been defined by UN that are to be achieved by 2030, although it seems sort of tough right now to really achieve these milestones, but your goal one is no poverty, extreme destitution, especially seen in the African countries. Their conditions are really terrible because of being in remote areas, the terrorism, the extremities that have been happening there. So let's see how by 2030 what we are able to achieve, right? Now the report that has come out, it was based on your consumer pyramid household survey, and it is an annual survey that is conducted by your Center for Monitoring Indian Economy group, right, which is known as CMIE. Now this report was based upon your periodic labor force survey and National Family Health Survey. Recently National Family Health Survey 5 came out, right? Now this usage of consumer pyramid household survey was in line with your consumption level of National Sample Survey, NSS consumption survey, so that a sort of periphery can be formed about it. There can be a accountability around both the strands of it, right? Now the aim of the survey is to encourage the exchange of development and quickly disseminate the findings of research in the progress. This was the core aim of the report. Basically, they want to eliminate the extreme poverty in India, first by conducting thorough researches about it and then finding out ways how to eliminate it. Now, what are the key findings of the report? The key findings of the report, these are the statements you can directly quote in your papers, your essays, your GS2 papers and your optional paper, right? So, poverty in India is 12.3 percentage points lower in 2019 as compared to 2011, right? And the poverty headcount rate has declined from 22%, 22.5% in 2011 to 10.2% in 2019. But poverty reduction was higher in rural areas as compared to urban areas. Problem is, when we talk about urban areas, we only see the posh areas, the good living areas of the urban society. We do not address the people who are deep seated in the slum areas of urban areas. So these are the major chunks of people which stay neglected, stay out of the surveys, right? The other findings were the farmers with small holdings, they have experienced the higher income growth, right? Extreme poverty was as low as 0.8% in pre-pandemic year, and food transfers were instrumental. The food transfers, the unconditional cash transfers that have happened just because the government of India wanted to support people, they have been instrumental in providing people to survive in accordance with the conditions they have been living in, and remained at par in the level of year of 2020, right? Then consumption inequality in India, that was moderated after 2011, was almost, there was no change between 2015 and 2019. So consumption inequality has stayed sort of constant between 2015 and 2019. So these are the things that, these are the key findings that have come out in the World Bank report. Now, Government of India time and again has constituted a couple of committees, particularly to work out through your poverty issue. So there was the working group of 1962. This committee was the first committee that was formed. Then came V.N. Dandekar and N. Rath committee in 1970. Sorry about the error. So in 1970. Then came Y.K. Alag in 1979. Then came D.T. Lakdawala in 1993. This was the crucial committee. Then came Suresh Tendulkar committee in 2019, and then came C. Rangarajan committee in 2014. Now the issue is, in Lakdawala committee, they constituted that education and healthcare, they both were provided by Government of India. So while calculating the poverty line estimates, they did not take in consideration your education and health areas. But when 1990s came, the prices of education and healthcare soared sky high. So your Tendulkar committee took in consideration education and healthcare as well while calculating your poverty line. Then came Rangarajan committee, but their estimates, the government has still not taken any action on it. So even now, when we calculate your poverty lines, we take your Tendulkar committee in consideration. Now this is how your evolution of APL, BPL divisions of the society have been taking place, right? So this is your Lakdawala committee that came in 1993, then came your Tendulkar committee in 2009, and then came your Rangarajan in 2014, right? So this is an evolution. You can study it in detail in your PDFs. Now, why poverty matters, why this APL BPL concept matters? Because your 80%, because India is a country where poverty has been a major issue, major political issue and thriving issue ever since independence. So all your government policies, government schemes are based upon poor, right? How we can help the poor out, how we can take them out of destitution. So poverty numbers, they matter because your central core yojanas, the schemes like Antodya Anna Yojana, Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, right? They are basically dependent on the estimates of poverty that are given by the states based on the definition which is given by Niti Aayog, earlier which was given by your Planning Commission, right? So this is why poverty estimates, they matter in India. Now, in 2011, Oxford committee, there were two professors. One was James Foster and there was this lady called Belkhair, I guess. I'm sorry, I do not remember the name right now. So there were two scholars. In 2011, they gave a concept of a multidimensional poverty index called MPI. So here they included 10 factors, 10 indicators that are used, that can be used to calculate poverty, and this is a very comprehensive way of calculating your poverty lines. These are nutrition, child mortality, your year of schooling, right, school attendance, ownership of assets, access to a proper house, electricity, drinking water, sanitation and clean cooking fuel. So these are a very comprehensive list of indicators that have been given by researchers from Oxford University. So Government of India, there was in between, there was a talk between even including these factors in poverty line ratios, but since all our policies, they revolve around poverty line, this was a lot to take in. There have still been talks going around it. Let's see how it unfolds. Now there have been a lot of government initiatives to for poverty alleviation. Let's see what a couple of them are. So Manrega scheme, all of us know what Manrega scheme is. Not, if not, please read it in detail. It is a very basic scheme. As an aspirant of UPSC, you should know about it. Then there was this Deen Dayal Antodya Yojana, National Rural Livelihood Mission. Then there is Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushal Yojana. Then there is Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Gramin, Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. Then there is Shama Prasad Mukherjee Rurban Mission, Rural Urban Mission. Then there is National Social Assistance Program. Then there have been programs of Department of Land Resources and Watershed Development. Basically components of Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, etc, etc. Right, there have been a couple of more programs like Pradhan Mantri Dhan Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana and Integrated Rural Development Program IRDP. So these are a couple of initiatives that have been taken by Government of India ever since independence. You can study about them in detail. It's good to know about them so that you can again quote them in your answers. Prelims, they'll give you a couple of statements and ask you which is correct, which is not, which is the objective of a particular scheme. So good to know about them. This is an infographic. I've taken this from Indian Express. This basically shows you how much amount is invested in each of the scheme and how far it has been helping the people of India to come out of poverty and in which ways it has been helping them. Right. Now, issues and challenges, why the poverty has removing, alleviating poverty, eradicating poverty has been our core agenda ever since independence, but we have failed to a lot of extent. because of these couple of reasons. There are n number of reasons, including corruption, your black marketing, etc., etc., greed of people. But these are the people we have addressed to. We have failed to address majority of vulnerable people who live just above poverty line or on poverty line. So see, if for example poverty line estimates say if you earn 100 rupees daily, you are above poverty line, right? If you earn more than 100 rupees or 100 rupees, you are above poverty line. If you earn less than 100 rupees, you are below poverty line. 99 rupees kamane wala is below poverty line and 101 kamane wala is above poverty line. This is how maths work, this is how calculation works, but real life scenarios do not work in this way. Someone who's earning just 2 rupees more than who is below poverty line, how can you expect him to cope up with the regularities of the world in a normal manner, right? So this is the prime reason we have failed to address majority of vulnerable people who are just on BPL or below BPL, right? Then high growth alone is not sufficient to reduce poverty, because as I've mentioned, it has multiple dimensions. Your social, healthcare, security, etc., etc., we have to address all those dimensions. Then middle income countries like India, they are basically a home to half of the poor people of the world, right? So these are the people, these are the sections of people, including Africa, they have to be addressed. But when we calculate, we consider the global north as well, and hence the programs that have to be helped out by the world institutions, they go to those people more rather than our global south. Then demonetization and pandemic, it has had sustained impacts on the poor people, right? They have been unable to cope up with the digital payment system, they have lost their earnings, employment, wages, their savings they have lost in healthcare. So it has had a domino effect and a sustained effect on their incomes and livelihood. Now let's discuss what the way forward could be. So contribution of poor both in workforce and the policies that are formed. See, poor ki problems, poor knows better rather than an armchair expert. So we need the contribution of poor both in your policies as well as your workforce, so that even they have a dignified standard of living. We need social mobilization, people have to be made aware, people will have to be made aware to empathize with these people so that their conditions can be improved. We'll have to create employment opportunities for them. Manrega was a step ahead in that direction, but it has still not been able to eradicate your whole problem, solve your whole problem of it. Now we'll have to identify your poverty stricken areas and develop infrastructure, required infrastructure there, whether it is health infrastructure, social infrastructure, educational infrastructure, everything will have to holistically work all around it, right? So this was all for today, right? If you have any doubts, you can mention them in your comments. We have discussed this topic. Study well. I hope you have been revising the topics that we have covered earlier, right? If you have any doubts, I've already mention them in your comments, and please enroll for the SIDHI test series. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Take care. Keep studying. Keep watching, and let's knock it out of the park on 5th of June. Okay. Thank you so much.